Protein powder. I did an Instagram story the other day and you guys were super interested in protein powders. You guys were asking, what's the best protein powders? How do I know which protein powder works for me? How do I know how to pick a protein powder? And I thought, what the heck? Let's do a whole YouTube video on it. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jessica Ash and I'm a functional and clinical nutritionist and a hormone researcher that just loves to dive into the science behind our biology. You know, as females, we have very, very specific physiology that works in a very specific way, and I kind of nerd out on it, and I like to teach you guys about it. So thank you for being here, and if you aren't already, subscribe to this channel, and you will see new videos every Thursday. But to dive into it, I mean, first things first, protein is such an important macronutrient, and protein is specifically important because it's made up of amino acids, and our body uses amino acids for all types of things. I guess we can think of them almost as like the building blocks of the body, but they do so much more than that. You know, they aid in detoxification, they help with gut repair, and yeah, they're super important for like our hair, our skin, our nails. But a lot of people don't realize that protein is that component in our diet that really helps lower blood sugar. So where carbohydrates help raise blood sugar, protein helps lower blood sugar, and they really work in balance to keep blood sugar stable. And when we're getting too much of one or not enough of the other, we can really send ourselves on a blood sugar spiral. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that thyroid hormone is actually made up of protein. And so thyroid health and metabolic health really depends on proper amino acid intake from the right sources. And so many women are under eating protein and they don't even realize it because they're either not eating enough in general or just really not focusing on getting the right sources in their diet. And it is so much better to get protein from whole food sources, things like eggs and milk and cheese and yogurt, fish and shellfish, and ruminant animal meat like bison and beef and venison. Beef organs or ruminant animal organ meat is really great source of protein. And then poultry like turkey and chicken are also great sources. Bone broth, gelatin, collagen is another great source of the amino acid glycine, which can really help balance out certain amino acids in muscle meats or meat protein. And so many women really find that when they're getting adequate levels of protein in their diet, their health improves greatly, not just the health of their blood sugar or the composition of their body because now they're growing more muscle or building more muscle, but also just in how they feel, their overall energy, maybe the quality of their skin, hair, and nails. And we have to keep in mind that we're only as good as the protein we digest. And so if we have gut issues or digestive issues and we're intaking adequate levels of protein, we need to make room for the protein that we may not be digesting and absorbing well, because if our digestive systems are not working as optimally as they should be, then there could be possibly a poor digestion of protein going on as well. So this is where actually eating a little bit more protein is often very helpful when women are trying to heal their metabolisms. And even if a woman is focusing on getting a variety from whole food sources like we talked about a little bit ago, it can be very helpful to have a tool like protein powder, like a high quality protein powder, to really help us meet our needs every day. And this is where protein powder can be a tool that can help us reach our goals. Is it necessary for health? No. It doesn't necessarily mean that protein powders are superior to whole food sources. I think a lot of nutritionists or maybe a lot of people who are big proponents of supplements maybe make it seem like protein powders are so important for health and you should always have a protein powder in your cabinet. And I don't think that's true. I think it's actually better to really prioritize whole food sources and getting a variety of different proteins. You know, the closer we are to nature, our body usually does a little bit better there. But if, you know, when we're trying to get that 100 grams of protein a day at least, or even more if we're athletic or active, it can be really helpful to have something in the cabinet that helps us kind of meet those needs. But with that being said, like there really is no perfect protein powder. Everyone's so different, and a lot of people want me to say like, oh, this is the perfect protein powder for you, but there really is no perfect protein powder. Protein powders are a processed food, meaning that it's not as much of a whole food as, let's let's say a grass-fed bison burger, you know, that powdered protein is not the same thing. The body's not going to respond to it in the same way. It doesn't have the same vitamins and nutrients. It's not going to be digested in the same way. Does that mean it's bad? No, but we do have to acknowledge that protein powders are a processed food. That's just a fact. But for some people, the body might not actually respond that well to a protein powder, and so you should listen to your body. And if you actually don't do well on protein powders, don't try to force it. Just really focus on whole, real food sources of protein. Now, what do I look at when I'm trying to pick a protein powder? Obviously, today we're going to talk about some of my favorites, but by no means can it be an exhaustive list because there are so many products out there these days. So I want to give you guys some tools to really break down if a protein powder is a good choice or a bad choice. And sometimes it can take some time to really work through to find the ones that work the best for us. It can take some experimentation and some paying attention to our body. But there are 4 things that I tend to look at when I'm looking at a protein powder or when I'm kind of looking at an ingredient list. The first thing is bioavailability. So is this protein derived from a source that is already very bioavailable to my body, meaning my body knows how to break it down, absorb it, assimilate it. That's a really, really important thing, first of all, bioavailability. The second thing is common sense, and it kind of goes into the first category, which is bioavailability. Like, would I consume this food normally and get an adequate amount of protein or get this amount of protein from a common sense sized portion? For example, I could consume a very sensible portion of Greek yogurt and achieve 25 grams of protein very easily. And so, you know, if I'm consuming a dairy-based protein powder, like, it's very possible that I could consume that amount of protein from a sensible sized portion of dairy. And I could get the 25 grams of protein from the whey and the casein that is in that Greek yogurt product or that dairy product. And so that would make sense to consume a protein powder that's derived from a food like that. Whereas we'll look at like a vegan protein powder and it will say like brown rice protein or pea protein, but never would I ever consume the 5 cups of brown rice it would take for me to achieve the 25 grams of protein in that brown rice protein powder. Or never would I ever consume 3.5 cups of peas in one sitting to achieve the 25 grams of protein that I would need to get from peas. So this is where common sense really needs to come into play. You know, not all protein powder products are created equal, and don't be super caught up in those labels, because just because something is vegan does not mean it's common sense. It might be like absolutely the opposite of common sense. So we have bioavailability, using our common sense, and then the next thing is quality of ingredients. So just take a glance at the ingredients. You know, there are products that have so many additives in them and so many chemicals that we would never consume, you know, in any other case. And so it's just really important whenever you're buying a product to just flip it over and take a peep at the ingredients. That's all it takes is, you know, trust that your common sense will tell you like, yeah, this doesn't look like it really belongs there. Usually a protein powder product will have obviously the main ingredient. So let's say it's a whey protein. It will have that whey protein in it. And then if it has flavorings, it should be very simple flavoring. So for example, if it's chocolate flavor, it should have just like cocoa powder and maybe a little bit of a sweetener. And that should be really it. I mean, some of them are going to contain lecithins to help them emulsify better. So that's what like things like sunflower lecithin do. It actually helps them not be super clumpy, but it comes at a cost, right? You may react to the sunflower lecithin and you may not do well with sunflower lecithin. So it might actually be better to have a poorer textured protein powder over one that emulsifies and has the perfect texture, but is bugging the digestive tract. So it's really important to pay attention to the quality of ingredients. And then the fourth one is digestibility. So even if the protein powder is the best on the market or somebody mentions it as being such a great source of protein, if you can't digest it or it really wrecks your digestion, it is not a good protein powder for you. So it's very important with all your food is to keep digestibility in mind, because if you can't digest a food well, you're probably not achieving the benefits you're wanting to achieve from consuming that food anyways. So why even consume it? So once we've gone over those 4 concepts, which is bioavailability, common sense, my favorite, ingredient quality, and digestibility, that really will help solve most of our protein powder woes. You know, it will really help us pick a protein powder that's right for us. But I want to talk about 5 different protein powders that you should have on your radar, and we'll talk about a variety and why maybe there's some pros and cons, and I'll just kind of give you guys some ideas so you can start doing your own research and figuring out what ones work best for you. The first type of protein powder, you've probably heard of it, is whey protein powder. It's very popular for good reason. It tends to be a very easily digested protein powder. It also digests fairly quickly at like 1 to 2 hours, so it really doesn't take very long to digest, which is why it's a popular favorite amongst athletes. You know, after a workout, a strength training workout, or, you know, a weightlifting workout, you really do want to get some easy to digest protein in about an hour after a workout so that your muscles can really start to rebuild and repair themselves. This is when whey protein really became popular, is because it's a great protein powder that helps get this job done. It has a very good balance of amino acids. It's probably one of the most bioavailable protein powders out there. It actually has some immunoglobulins in it, which can sometimes be very beneficial for the gut, but for some people it can still bother their digestive system because it does have a little bit of a higher tryptophan content. For some people that can turn into serotonin, and for people who already have excess serotonin in the gut, it can disrupt digestion. So it is a good idea to just pay attention. Even though it tends to be one of the most bioavailable proteins, it tends to be one of my favorites. It can be very effective for strength training and muscle building. At the same time, you always want to pay attention to how you're digesting it. Some of my favorite whey protein powders are going to be Wild Whey by Wild Foods Co. I really like this one. I also really like Naked Whey by Naked Nutrition. I've used that one for a really long time, and I really like Naked Nutrition products, but Naked Whey tends to be a great, like, very clean source of whey. I also really like Grass-Fed Native Whey Protein by John's Killer Protein. I really like their products and I like their sourcing, so that's a product that I do have on my radar and I've used multiple times. And then BioHealth's Precision Iso whey isolate proteins are also very effective. Now, for some people, there is a difference between whey concentrate and whey isolate. Whey isolates tend to be a little bit more expensive because they are an isolated product. A lot of them are either like cold processed or processed in a way that usually uses minimal processing. And so for some people who maybe don't respond to all whey products, a whey isolate is responded to usually pretty well. So I wanted to put this one on your radar as well. Now, for some people who don't really digest cow's dairy well, but still maybe want to get the benefits of whey, goat's milk whey proteins can actually be a really great option. A lot of people who don't digest cow's dairy well tend to digest goat's dairy okay, mostly because it's a naturally A2 containing protein, so it does tend to be a little bit easier on the digestive tract for some people. And I really like 2 goat milk whey products that I found on the market, and that is going to be Terra's goat milk whey and then Mount Capra's goat milk whey product. I've used both of them and I actually like both, and they do tend to be a little bit gentler on sensitive tummies, and I've had quite a lot of success with them and seen a lot of success with clients who don't tend to react to cow's milk whey all that well. Now, the third type of protein powder I wanted to put on your radar is casein protein. Now, casein protein is kind of a controversial protein, if protein could even be controversial, which food is these days. And casein is interesting because a lot of people tend to hate on it because they think it causes digestive issues. And the thing is you have to really understand casein. Casein does have an opiate-like effect. It does slow digestion down, and it is a very slow digesting protein. It can actually take about 4 to 5 hours to digest. And so for some people who already have sluggish digestive systems or their digestive system is already very slow, casein can make this issue exacerbated or really magnify this issue, and then they think like, oh gosh, casein is the worst protein, and it's really just from a lack of understanding how casein works. It is very slow digesting. It is very rich in minerals, and it actually has some peptides in it that could possibly be very good for gut issues. I've also seen some evidence and some research studies showing that it might have a protective effect against cortisol, so it may actually protect against the effects of stress. So, you know, just because some people say it's bad or inflammatory doesn't necessarily mean that that should be taken as word. There's still a lot of conflicting info about casein. So bottom line is you got to use it properly. Usually people tend to digest or consume casein protein before they go to bed to kind of like slowly release the protein in the digestive tract while they're sleeping. This can be a great way to use casein, or if it just doesn't work for you, it just doesn't work for you, and that's totally fine. But I don't want you to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say like, oh, casein, somebody said casein was inflammatory and so therefore I shouldn't eat it. It can actually be a very effective muscle building tool and metabolism building tool when used the right way. Two of my favorite caseins are going to be Naked Casein by Naked Nutrition, the same company that makes the Naked Whey, and then I also like the Casein Protein by John's Killer Protein. So those two casein protein powders are great, high quality, but there are plenty on the market, and so again, just keep in mind our 4 principles when looking for protein powders. Now the fourth protein I want to bring to your attention is egg white protein powder. Now this one has been around for a really long time. I feel like it's been around since I started lifting weights, you know, over 10 years ago. But everybody has conflicting views on egg white protein. Some people love it and some people hate it. I'm somewhere in between. So one thing about egg whites, and specifically it's called the albumin of the egg, is that it can be very, very allergenic for some people. So people, usually when they're reacting to eggs, they tend to be reacting to the egg white over the egg yolk. It just tends to be the more allergenic part of the egg. And this is usually magnified if the chickens producing the eggs are eating a really crappy diet high in corn and soy, which is, you know, really not their native diet. Chickens should be eating an omnivorous diet. They are opportunistic omnivores, meaning they love to snack on bugs and worms. They'll eat just about anything. And so when they're fed corn and soy, a lot of times these allergens are making their way into the eggs, and people are reacting to not the eggs, but actually the allergens in the eggs. So what the chickens are eating matters in relationship to the quality of the egg. So that is something to keep in mind. I don't want to hate on eggs just to hate on egg whites, but some people do react to them for, you know, a multitude of reasons. But with that being said, some people do really, really well on egg white protein. If you're like me, I just throw a few whole raw eggs into my smoothie and call it a day. Some people don't like to do that, or some people think I'm crazy for doing that. And there's a lot of products on the market nowadays. So there's like liquid egg whites, like muscle egg, which is very, very popular right now. And then there's also powdered egg white proteins like the Julian Bakery egg white protein or the Paleo Pro protein powder that includes egg whites in it. So there are a lot of options on the market. So for some people, they love their egg whites. They love adding liquid egg whites to things. They love adding liquid egg whites to their eggs to boost the protein content, which is a great practice if egg whites really work for you. And then the last dairy-free protein that I wanted to bring to your attention that has kind of gained some popularity in the past couple of years is bone broth protein powder. Now, I know people love to like get super hyped up on fads, and bone broth has been quite the fad the past couple of years. And so, you know, they think in their head like bone broth equals good, so therefore bone broth protein equals awesome. And they think like it's the best protein powder known to man. But in reality, it can have some benefits, and one of its main benefits is that if you don't do well with dairy and you don't do well with egg whites, it can be probably one of the best bioavailable protein powders out there that has a pretty good amino acid profile. However, it's not the best protein powder. Like if you could digest whey, that's probably a much better protein powder than using bone broth protein powder. But if you can't, then bone broth protein powder is there as a tool. One of the things about it is that it tends to be a little bit lower in isoleucine, which is one of my favorite amino acids for helping with estrogen dominance and helping the body metabolize and use estrogen properly. You know, not all amino acids are created equal. This is why I emphasize a variety of protein sources all of the time. If you're familiar with my work, or you follow me on Instagram, or you've been digging into my content, or you take my course Fully Nourished, you know that I encourage get as much variety in your protein as possible. This is because protein is not protein is not protein, meaning that that protein is usually made up of a different variety of amino acids. Every protein source is a little bit different. And so if we want to get an abundance of all the amino acids and we want a balance of amino acids, we need to make sure we're consuming a variety of protein sources as much as we can tolerate without stressing ourselves out or forcing ourselves to eat things that aren't working for us. With that being said, this is why I'm talking about protein powders as tools. They shouldn't be relied upon for all of our protein, but they can really help add to this variety of amino acids, and they can really help us get our protein intake a little bit higher. So bone broth protein is one of those things where I don't idealize it. I don't think because it's bone broth or what's called like hydrolyzed beef protein that it's any better than any other protein, but it can be a really great source of protein for people who are really struggling to get their protein intake up, whether they have lots of food allergies or they react to a lot of foods and they are kind of getting sick of just having like meat all the time. It can be a really fun protein powder to kind of mix things up. That being said, two of my favorites, and there are a lot on the market, but two of my favorites are going to be the Paleo Valley bone broth protein powder and then the Julian Bakery beef protein powder. Now that one only comes in chocolate, but for me it's like a really creamy chocolate, so it tastes really good. But those are kind of my two favorite brands for the bone broth protein, or what's called the hydrolyzed beef protein, which is made from like ligaments and tendons and different parts of the animal. So in all those 5 protein powder recommendations, you probably noticed that I did not mention collagen protein powder. And a lot of people ask me about collagen and if collagen is a good source of protein. And the answer to that question is both yes and no, because collagen products, which are hydrolyzed from gelatin, are a great source of a few different amino acids, one of them being glycine, very, very high in glycine. And glycine is a really important amino acid because humans of old used to practice what we call nose to tail eating, meaning they would utilize every aspect of the animal. They would eat the meat, they would eat the organs, they would make broth out of cartilage, containing joints and ligaments, and we would consume all those amino acids. Now we really heavily focus on consuming muscle meat, which you are probably familiar with, like ground beef or chicken breast. That's all from the muscles of the animal. When in reality, we're really meant to consume all of the animal, or as much as the animal as possible. And so if we are not doing that, or we're not down to practice nose to tail eating, we want to mimic it as closely as possible. And this is really the purpose of products that contain collagen or gelatin. You're really trying to mimic this nose to tail eating practice that humans have practiced for so long. And so collagen and gelatin and bone broth, they can be really great nutrient dense sources that are very, very helpful when we're trying to get over digestive issues and balance our blood sugar and lower our inflammation. But they are not complete proteins, meaning they don't contain all the amino acids that we need. They don't give us the full variety that we need. And so we want to consume collagen, gelatin, bone broth in addition to our other protein sources so we get a full variety. And the purpose of collagen is really to provide us that glycine that helps with liver detoxification and supports our gut, but we don't want to rely on it too heavily for protein. And I see women doing this a lot. They're relying very heavily on collagen powder to meet their protein needs, and it becomes a roadblock in their healing journey or their hormone balancing journey. So if this is you and you're like, oh, I've been really relying very heavily on collagen, maybe it would be a good idea to review and say, maybe I should treat this as kind of an additional intake of protein, more as a supplement than a paramount or foundational part of my protein intake. And for some people it works great, but for a lot of people, they don't even realize it's a mistake they're making, and it's actually holding them back quite a bit. So that's why I didn't use it as a protein powder. It is not a complete protein, and so therefore I like to treat it as a supplement or an addition rather than a foundational protein source in a snack or a meal. So when we are attempting to feed ourselves well and nourish our bodies properly, protein powders can come in handy for sure. I love the convenience of them. I always have some type of protein powder in my cabinet or my pantry just because I do want to have the convenience, and I would prefer to meet my protein needs even if I have to use like a crutch like a protein powder over not meeting my protein needs when I'm busy or in a hurry or something like that. But if you loved this talk of protein powders and talk about getting enough amino acids to help support our body. I talk all about this in my online course, Fully Nourished, which is really the complete blueprint to teaching women how to use nutrition to really balance hormones and support their metabolism, rejuvenate their metabolism, and get their metabolism back to functioning how they want it to. To learn more about Fully Nourished, you can check out the link in the description box below. Also, if I have any affiliate links or discount codes for the products I mentioned today, they will be in the description box below as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.